I could curse her. Who is she with her gray hair and wrinkles? Hag-ridden, powerless creature? Why do I know her? Ask me, says the mirror. I reverse her. She is careless, fearless, fair, and she has power. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the very first weekly reading report of 2026. Think about this. We are now closer to 2030 than 2020. Let that sink in for a second. Check it out, guys. Big news. We hit 100 subscribers. I'm famous. Hell yeah. We're doing great. So what do we have going on this week? Let's see. In my notes here, little key points here, I put delirious poetry, drug smuggling, narco-satanists, surreal stories, and coming of age in the South, with a caveat of, let's see who gets mad at me calling Texas the South, because I know that that does happen. This was an extraordinarily varied reading week. There was a lot of short fiction. I really delved into a lot of short fiction, some shorter format stuff. If you're new here, hello, welcome. We're going to start out, as we do every week, with a check-in on my Read What You Own challenge. An update here. Now, the Read What You Own challenge is a challenge that I embarked upon on the 1st of November last year. So 2 months ago now, where I need to read 12,500 pages of text that I own, be it in physical form or on my Kindle. I have to read all of that before I can buy any more books for myself. The TBR ratio is all fucked up in the library, so I'm trying to fix that ratio a bit. There is one small caveat, and that is I am in a philosophy discussion group that meets every 2 weeks on Friday. And oftentimes we go over different texts that come in books, and if I have to buy a book for the philosophy group, I will do that. Other than that, complete book buying embargo. This week, I read 1,311 pages of owned text, which is a shit ton of text, actually, when I look at the number now. With that addition, it brings us up to 8,438 pages of our 12,500 page goal. We're 64 days in, and I am 67.5% complete. I finished 10.5% of this challenge last week. I'm trying to aim for about 1% a day, which is 125 pages a day. At this point, I have a little tiny bit extra, and we are exactly 3.5 days ahead of schedule. Reading at this point, I'm set up to finish right before the end of January. So I'm very excited about that. And then we will have some big old book review on all the books that I read during the challenge. Now let's take a look at what I actually finished reading. The very first book that I finished reading this week was Buried Secrets, a true story of serial murder. Now, this is a book that I started over Christmas break in San Diego and then finished over here, being on the border with Mexico and Texas. I believe it's right. Yeah, it's right there because there's the Rio Grande. There's just a whole bunch of drug smuggling that goes on. And there comes about this man named Adolfo Constanzo from Miami in Florida, moves down into Mexico, and he joins into the operation of all the smuggling and everything, but he brings this crazy ass religion to that, just like human sacrifice and giving up your soul, essentially does blessings for drug smugglers and stuff. But then it goes way, that's like stage one, that's how they get you in, but then he just goes full fucking serial killer bullshit cult. It's super interesting. It's written as what I would call like an airport book, to where it's constantly moving forward and every single thing has to keep you engaged with the story. There is a lot of internalizing and telling us like the thoughts of the people that were going on. It's nonfiction, but I wonder just, I think about it. I don't think it's quite like an Eric Larson level of is it, whatever. It's very nicely investigated. And this came onto my radar because it was one of the research texts for last podcast on the left did an episode on this, a three-part episode on this about 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I was able to finish up part 4 of 9, this huge ass book of Bone. I've been reading this for about a year now at this point. I've just reached the 600 page mark. I spoke in previous videos about how I think we're about to get more traveling and more change in the story. We didn't necessarily get a whole lot of all of what I was expecting in the traveling, but there is like some seismic shift and there's some major series progression that's going on in here. It's just as funny as it always has been. It is just as entertaining as it always has been. I love it. It's my favorite comic book, and I still am not even halfway through this book. So I will be continuing on with this. Maybe not immediately, but I will be continuing on with it, and I'm going to be kind of sipping off of it for a long time because I love it, and I just never want it to end. Thankfully, it's a 1,300 page comic book. The Hashish Films of Customs Officer Henry Rousseau and Tatiana Yukov shuffles the cards. I think I pronounced that right. Hallucinatory prose poetry is how it was sold to me. It's very pretty to read. A lot of it's very confusing, and a lot of it I think has a bit of some dated looks on, kind of like misogyny and stuff. But with that little tiny bit aside, it says that it's 2 individual little stories of poems put into one. But I spent like an extra half an hour looking at it, and I cannot tell you where one starts and one ends. There's a lot of hash eating, as you can imagine, so that's fun. And then it's kind of funny because it's self-aware in all of the hash that's in it. And towards the end, there's like, this person's opinion and response on my hash usage. This has me interested because I really like how fucking off the wall and crazy weird it is. Definitely the thing that I like about this the most is just how unusual and how unique it is and how completely itself it is. I don't have anything else in my library that is quite like this. So speaking of our philosophy group, this last week was on our introduction to The Rebel by Albert Camus. I tabbed the shit out of my book. I'm still processing this, and we had only our first meeting on it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it to our second meeting because I have a doctor's appointment on that day at that exact time, because of course I do. Camus is bringing a lot of the atheist philosophy aspect that I was missing in our Kant discussions previously on Immanuel Kant. The Rebel resonates as an ardent, eloquent, and supremely rational voice of conscience for our tumultuous times. And that's what it really got me the most, is this is so logical. This is definitely like a text that anyone can read, and me being rather new to philosophy, it's so much more consumable and understandable than what I was reading written in the 17th century by Kant, or 18th century, whatever the hell they were. They've been long ago. So after our bit of hallucinatory poetry, I had to dive back into a bit of pretty actual, like, love it poetry. I finished up part 1 of 60 Odd by Ursula K. Le Guin. 60 Odd is, as you might imagine, it is a collection of poetry that was written and collected shortly after she turned 60. The first thing that I noticed once I hit the beginning of this was how mature it was. There was definitely a good amount of maturing that I have seen reading up to this point chronologically in this book, but there was almost like a seismic shift and like a lane change, a gear change when we got to hear a lot of it went from like motherhood sentimentality to like grandmother sentimentality. There's a lot of consciousness about aging and kind of frailty and losing things and a bit of uncertainty that comes in this. There were a good few standouts in here. The most recent one, and I think my favorite one in this collection so far, is here. It's on page 346 in the Library of America edition that I have. It's called The Stepmother. I could curse her. Who is she with her gray hair and wrinkles? Hag-ridden, powerless creature? Why do I know her? Ask me, says the mirror. I reverse her. She is careless, fearless, fair, and she has power. There's this feminine power that always comes through with Le Guin. Whenever I read her, whether it be short stories from her, whether it be poetry from her, whether it be Hainish novels or anything, everything is so steeped in this awareness of like this maternal warmth and strength and fortitude. Here, another one. Every single one that I've tabbed out is kind of like what I define as like girl power stuff. And Le Guin does it perfectly here. On page 232, in a poem that's simply titled "Read at the Award Dinner, May 1996. Beware when you honor an artist. You are praising danger. You are holding out your hand to the dead and the unborn. You are counting on what cannot be counted. A poet's measures serve anarchic joy. The storyteller tells one story, freedom. Above all, beware of honoring women artists, for the housewife will fill the house with lions, and in with the grandmother comes bears, wild horses, great horned owls, coyotes. There's this awareness of the dichotomy of man and woman. It's always there, and it's this feminist energy that I love so much in Le Guin. I can't get enough of it. I love it so much. I also read the first two short stories in this Dino Buzzati NYRB, The Bewitched Bourgeois. I anticipated that I would like this a lot. It's Dino Buzzati, who was the author of my favorite book of the year last year. Go watch the video if you haven't seen it. I gush about it a whole bunch. The Stronghold, aka The Tartar Steppe. This is a huge collection of 50 short stories from throughout his career, starting in like 1937 all the way through the end of his career. I haven't looked to see exactly when that is yet. On page 1, I went and I was reading through, and I saw that this was a story from 1937, which is 3 years before Tartar Steppe was published. And I'm hit with the character name of the title character from that book. And I was like, holy shit, it's the same character with the same mindset and kind of the same thing going on, but in like a different line of work. The same character, but a little bit previously in his life to where it is in the Tartar Steppe. Kind of felt to me like it was a bit of the story that he then built off of and turned into the Tartar Steppe. It's so similar in mentality and tone to Tartar Steppe. It's excellent. 10 little pages. I read that, and I also read the second story, which is called Seven Floors. Seven Floors is all about a person being sent to a huge 7-floor hospital where the most healthy people are kept on the top, and the bottom is the death floor, and the more sick you get, the further they bring you down, and it's about bureaucratic bullshit, moving people around, and just inescapable dread and sickness. What is the sickness? They never really tell you exactly what the sickness is, but I've got a couple ideas on what it could have been. Go buy a copy because this is awesome. So that goes into everything that I'm calling I finished reading, even though there's obviously a couple things I'm going to be continuing reading, almost all of it. I got into, how far am I? I am 278 pages into Boy's Life. I'm coming up on the halfway mark. You know, this was sold to me as a horror story, in many of the ways that It by Stephen King was sold to me in a horror story. And so much like when I read it, this is turning out to be so much more than I thought it was going to be, so much more than I was expecting from it. It's better than I was expecting it to be. It's so heartfelt. The characters are drawn very real. The pains of the characters are drawn very real. Very, very nicely. The sentimentality is there, the rationality is there, everything seems plausible at this point. I'm definitely seeing what people relate it to as far as it, but I'm also seeing how it is entirely its own thing and how it is different. I don't see it as a response to it necessarily. I don't at all see it as playing off of it in any way. Now, I'm only halfway through at this point. So next week I'm sure we'll have all kinds to say about it and talk about it. I do plan to have this finished up by next week. It's excellent. There is some beautiful life lessons in here. There's a lot of what Mike from Mike's Book Reviews rightly so calls the dad shit. There's so much of the relationship between the father and the son in this that is absolutely genuine. Makes me think of my own father. It's and the coming of age. The coming of age in this is spectacular, perfect. There's a small passage here that I put up on a post that you could read on YouTube here about just the beauty of the tone and the coming of age that happens in here. On that ride to my house, as the summer-scented air hit me in the face, and gnats spun in the whirlwinds of my passage, I realized all prisons were not buildings of gray rock bordered by guard towers and barbed wire. Some prisons were houses where closed blinds let no sunlight enter. Some prisons were cages of fragile bones, and some prisons had bars of red polka dots. In fact, you could never tell what might be a prison until you had a glimpse of what was seized and bound inside. It's just these beautiful little passages of coming of age. It's a boy's life. It's just the story of a boy's life. It's basically just as glorious as I was expecting it to be. I have no notes as of yet. Nothing's done wrong. Everything's done right. There's this beautiful, like, you could feel the South. And this is where people might get upset because I'm going to call it the South. A lot of people, especially in Texas, say Texas is not the South. Texas is a bit different. I understand that. I respect that. That's fine. But like, you could feel the heat coming off the pavement and the dirt. You could feel the dust in your shoes. It's a perfect time. It's a really good time. So what am I reading next? My big goal for this next week is to finish Boy's Life. I want to get the back 300 pages of that under me. Loving it so far. I don't have any doubt that I'm going to be able to finish that lickety split. I would love to finish part 2 of 60 Odd. I'm really liking it. not every single poem in part one was like my favorite thing in the world, but it definitely got a couple of the tabs. So I look forward to finishing that. I want to read a couple more stories at least from Buzzati. I have a big book of Borges that I would love to get into. I don't know if I should crack into it yet. I think I may as well jump into Flann O'Brien's The Third Policeman before I go ahead and get into the Borges book, just because The Third Policeman is a mandatory book chosen by the wheel on this month's TBR video. So we'll see. I'm gonna kind of feel out how I'm going. More continue with the short and the poems, and I might throw some articles in. We'll see. Next week on the channel, what video can we be expecting for the topic video next week? I'd like to put out a video. I'm compiling notes for my reading goals and most anticipated reads for 2026. The word goals is going to be tentative. I should say written in pencil rather than pen on my goals, seeing as how moody of a reader I am. That's everything I got going on. Let me know what you're reading down in the comments, guys. Cheers.